On this edition of One Plus One, a time for reflection with Alain de Botton. Hello, I'm Jane Hutchin. Welcome to the programme. Alain de Botton is a writer and philosopher who grew up in Switzerland and then Britain. He says one of the great challenges of life is to learn how to be sad without succumbing to bitterness or anger. It's a provocative thought when we're constantly urged to be happy, a state he describes as a momentary occurrence. Happily, Alain has done well out of explaining life's ups and downs. He's the author of books and novels that explain the different states we go through and the things that are important to us, such as status and even architecture. His latest book is Religion for Atheists. He says, as an atheist, he's learned much from different faiths and their rituals. Alain de Botton, welcome to One Plus One.
Thank you so much.
Would you regard yourself as being in the happiness industry?
I'm, I guess, in the industry of guidance and the search for fulfillment. Happiness is a word I've got a bit of a problem with because it suggests that the goal of life is to be sort of smiling and cheerful all the time. I see happiness as a very momentary occurrence that isn't something we should be aiming for. I think the aim is to have a fulfilled life, and that's going to involve a lot of sadness. And one of the great challenges of life is to learn how to be sad, how to be sad without succumbing to bitterness, let's say, or anger. And so I would see myself, yes, as in the moderately unhappy business.
Why I ask is that happiness seems to be a bit of a catchphrase at the moment. One could actually say there is a happiness industry, a global happiness industry. And in fact, the British Prime Minister has put a lot of store, and Britain actually has a happiness index. Do you think this is interesting to measure on a national level?
Look, I think it's interesting to go beyond merely economic indicators of whether something is working well or not. You know, and there are strange statistics, so that if a couple gets divorced, the economic indicator suggests that the country is getting richer because lawyers are being involved, a new house will be built, etc. Whereas at a human level, obviously this is a failure. So I think a statistic that recognises the rise and fall of personal fulfilment rather than merely the rise and fall of income seems an important measure to have.
But do you think it's a measure as a country, in terms of a country as a whole? For example, I think the Scots describe themselves quite frequently, not all of them, of course, as a nation of miserable people. Some could actually say that might apply to some English people as well. But is it useful to categorise whole countries like that?
No, but I think you can see that, for example, if you build a new motorway, that motorway may help people to get to work faster, but at the same time it will blight the lives of those around it. So you can start doing happiness audits on the value of building that motorway. And it may be that on second considerations, maybe you shouldn't build that motorway because the net result in terms of levels of happiness will actually be lower. So you can come up with interesting policy consequences by paying closer attention not just to monetary values but to more human psychological ones.
What about the concept of change? We always live in a changing world. I mean, they did in the Industrial Revolution as well. But we're constantly being told that we have to change. Do you think it's possible for individuals to change?
Look, I think that the change of industry and technology all around us is very dizzying. And while it's exciting, it also leaves in many of us a longing for calm. I think there's never been in history a longing for calm as intense as there is now. You know, you hear everybody saying that what they would most like maybe is an hour a day when there is no distraction. We're having a terrible time staying focused. We can now see why people invented monasteries. You know, monasteries were invented so that you could get away from the distraction of daily life in order to think of the important things. And for centuries, one would think, well, what was the point of that? Couldn't you just do that in a quiet room in the kitchen? But the point is now, as daily life is becoming ever more complex, more and more people are realizing that a kind of that inner focus is highly valuable.
How do you personally find quiet times, find calm?
I wait till the middle of the night, and I find that as a thinker, my most original and courageous thoughts only come once everybody else has gone to bed. Because while the whole city is alive and awake, there's a part of my mind that's essentially always trying to be a bit too normal, as though I want my thoughts to be in line with the thoughts of everyone else. It's like I have a conformist mind. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm just totally conformist in my mind. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of the night, suddenly it's time for those wilder thoughts to emerge. And in some of those are the seeds of some interesting projects. So I would recommend to everybody, insomniacs and those who are not so insomniacs, to make a bit of time for the very late at night or the very early morning when a lot of people are still asleep. That's when we can confront bits of ourselves that are quite shy during the rest of the day and yet which hold the key often to our own development.
Personally speaking, I couldn't stay up until 3 a.m. I wondered, do you feel that sleep is overrated?
Look, sleep is deeply important to physical well-being. We wouldn't be able to cope with many of the challenges that life throws at us without the resourcefulness that sleep gives us. That said, yes, as I say, I'm aware in myself that some of the best discoveries and lines and bits of books that I've ever come across have been precisely at those moments when I've gnawed away at the standard sleeping calendar.
So how many hours would you say you sleep a night?
Well, I sleep in bits and bobs, so I might be awake between 3 and 5, and then I'm not going to get through the day, but I'll try and fit in a siesta at some point in the afternoon. And I used to feel very guilty about this. I thought, I'm one of these writers, I'm really becoming decadent, I'm losing the plot here. But I now realise that, you can be at your desk at 9 o'clock in a suit and not doing any real work. And similarly, you can be in your pyjamas at 3 in the morning and actually things are really firing. So it's really working according to when you're productive rather than when it looks like you should be working.
You mentioned work, and probably of all your books that you've written, the book on work, working life, in a little poll I did, probably had the most divergent number of views. I wonder, you were brought up, I understand that your father was quite a wealthy financier. Did he inculcate in terms of his own life the need, the importance for work?
Yes, I grew up in a self-made family that had come from great hardship, and luckily in his later years my father was able to make money, but the feeling was as we were growing up that we were on our last penny all the time. And
were you really? Or...
Well, not on the last penny, but we didn't have a huge amount of money, and my father had been very traumatised by early poverty. And I think anyone who knows that sort of background will know what it does to people, which is to make money seem very important. And I think that it's been a fascinating theme for me in my own writing to explore how people make money, what money means to them, and the anxieties that surround the making of money. I wrote a book a few years ago called Status Anxiety, which was really about how people in the prosperous world find that they're traumatized by constant worries about their position in the social hierarchy, even though no one's going to starve.